often I feel like I get too nervous to reach out and be like, hey, like, can I get some advice, you know?
And in truth, it's a real gift. If there's any kind of experience, strength, and hope that you have that you could actually impart to someone, so reach out, always.
Oh, I will. I'm getting everybody's contact information after this.
And we'll help you set up the bakery.
Yes. Yes. You do baking, and then you do pottery, and then you act as well.
You would think I could help you with the pottery, but unfortunately, I cannot.
Okay. I just got that. Yeah.
That's item.
Yes, that's what I was joking about. That's what I was joking about.
That's the right.
Welcome to the Hollywood Reporter Actress Roundtable. We have a remarkable group of actresses with us here today. Let's dive in. I guess, show of hands, who here has ever signed on for a role that you were really excited about and then gone home and thought, what have I just done? Yeah, Zoe?
Yeah. I think,
Which role?
more oftentimes than not. The series that I'm doing right now, Lioness, which was a show that was very dialogue heavy, and I wanted to challenge myself and sort of like address my dyslexia and my anxiety by taking on a character that really was commanding with a lot of dialogue. And the moment I said yes, I went home and I looked at my partner and I was like, I don't think I can do this. And then obviously the next day was just, roll your sleeves up and just, create all the tools that you need to get there.
Can anybody
but it was
relate to
really
that?
nerve-wracking.
I don't think I've ever done that, but I do remember the first film I made when it was the second film that I made, but I was in every shot of it. I remember going home after one night's shooting and lying in the bath and trying to plan how I would break into the British Film Institute, which was making the film, to seize the dailies and destroy them.
My love for you just grew.
Really figuring it out. I knew Rathbone Place, which is the street in London. I was figuring out, there'll be a night watchman. What could I do to distract him? I was really going down that line.
But why?
I know,
Did you want to see the
that's the
daily?
same thing. Why?
I think, to be
you've played a
honest,
thief.
I just couldn't imagine that any film in which I was in every frame was going to be anything other than unbearable. And there was no, the first film I was in, I wasn't in every frame, and there were lots of other people, and I was always interested in seeing their scenes play out. I would go and watch them work. But when you're in every shot, it's difficult to imagine. I mean, whenever I see a film that I'm in, for the first few times I see it, my face is kind of fuzzed out like on those police videos, and then slowly, like the third screening, I'll go, oh yeah, it's you.
Yeah.
Does anybody relate to that?
I mean, I think the first few times watching it through, it's always a little bit of the dissecting of what you've done, what you could have done, to then step back and be able to then really take in the whole, let go of your own ego, attachment to what other people think. Where you can then really kind of embrace. But even now, can you watch yourself? Can you
I don't mind
I cannot
looking at
watch
myself.
myself.
I find it very hard to hear myself.
I can't watch I can't.
I don't like hearing myself.
Same.
I don't.
No,
I don't
I'd rather
like-
watch
You have
myself than
such a
hear myself.
beautiful voice. That's so interesting.
But do you feel that? Would you rather, if you had a choice, would you rather watch yourself silent or hear your voice?
I don't like either. I really have trouble watching myself too. I don't. There's many films I've never seen. There's things I don't. I can never watch dailies. I don't enjoy watching myself.
There's films you haven't seen.
Yeah.
Wow. That must be very tantalizing. Aren't you tempted?
No, because I don't know. I think like you we all probably have more discomfort with the presentation of self as much as I love the work. I love the process. I don't want to think about what I look or sound like, or else I don't know if I'd be as free.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then I think once it's over, I do want an audience to connect, but I don't there's nothing I can do.
Yeah.
So
Do you feel the same way over the films that you've directed versus the ones that you've performed in?
no, I'm better when I'm not in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can sort of separate and watch your work objectively, right? When you
Yes.
directed versus yeah.
Yes.
Zendaya, what are you thinking as you're hearing this? You've been
No,
quietly
I'm
listening.
it's so interesting because, like I said, I'm such a fan of everyone here. So it's so now I'm just taking it in, and sometimes it's hard to go. Oh, I should speak too, but because I want to ask a lot of questions. But yeah, I find, for me at least, that I'm a very self-conscious person. Like everything I do, I'm very self-critical, and I find that being on a set is one of the few places that I just don't judge myself.
Wow.
And I can just be super free, 'cause I'm like, wait, it's not me. You know what I mean? I wouldn't make that decision. I'm not that, I can just exist in this person, and I feel almost while still very attached to them, also detached to them. So I feel like I love when a director's like, hey, come here and just point something out, and I don't mind watching myself because I'm like, it's not me. You know what I mean? It's like this weird thing, and I don't actually ever get weird about it until I go, oh, people are gonna see this. That's when once it's time to promote something, and actually I'm like, oh, now I'm self-conscious about the work that I just made. But up until this point, I was just in my little bubble of creative freedom, and it's not until you realize oh, this won't belong to just me forever. The world will consume it at some point, that you start my head starts going. So I like living in that little creative
That's a really
pocket.
beautiful. That's a really beautiful way that you're holding that. I think it's a very evolved place to be in, actually.
Thank you.
Yeah, it is, because I think it takes a lot to get past that part where we are able to not be self-conscious.
Yeah.
I think that is a real gift. I'm going
I
to just
think
take that little gem
It's
too.
also, but it's also what you're speaking to is when you look at yourself on a monitor, or even in the film eventually, it's not just not you, it's not yours, because it's the light, it's the makeup, it's the costume, it's the design. I remember once, years and years ago, the second film when I was in every frame, and I remember in week 10 thinking, I want a little bit of praise. Where am I going to get it from? But I was too proud to ask anybody for any praise. So I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll ask the editor. I'll ask him which is his favorite shot in the movie so far, because I'm in 99%. Likely that I might get it. And so I went to the editor and I said, what's your favorite shot? And he said, oh, that's really hard. There's that shot, close up of you, and then this, I'm thinking, I'm in with a chance. He finally said, yeah, I think I got it. It's this close-up of you in this moment. I don't know how he did it. Wow. And it was genius. It cured me in that moment. I thought, yeah, he's right. How did the cinematographer do that? How did the cinematographer frame it and light it? Correct. Not actually much to do with me at all. So I never asked for any praise ever again. It cured me completely. And that's what you're speaking to. Because you look in the monitor and you go, well done, everybody. And you're in there somewhere.
Yeah.
But it's not just you. So it's such a collective thing.
Absolutely. Well, you truly are an amalgamation of all these genius people's ideas. I mean, that's what we were just talking about with directing, because I would love to direct one day, and you've been able to do it and in a beautiful way, and something that makes me so nervous is that. And she was like, but there's people to help you. There's these gorgeous team of people that we get to work with that create, I think, just as much as we do the characters that we play. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Mikey, when I think about having a lack of self-consciousness on set, I think about the opening scenes in Anora where you're in this nightclub, and as I understand it in the script, there was not a lot of direction for you, right? You were just told to go up and approach customers, potential customers. Can you talk a little bit about what that was like?
Yeah, so all of that is improvised. Sean created an entirely live set. So there's music blasting, a DJ's playing, there's my coworkers all over the club, men everywhere. And Sean shot it on a long lens, so he was in the corner of the club, and he would just follow me around, picking up men, talking to people, talking to my coworkers, trying to get guys to come to the back room and get a dance with me. So so we just shot 30 minutes straight of that, and then whittled it down to a couple minutes of the film, which is the introduction into Annie and who she is.
It's a great intro.
It's so wonderful.
It's such a wonderful intro.
And that's exactly what we get, is that absolute, you're so entrenched, you're so embedded in the world of it. You don't for a second not believe that. It's really wonderful what you do in the film.
Absolutely.
You should be very proud.
Talking with the consultants was the most important part of the preparation. I think it's just understanding how psychological of a job it is to be a sex worker. It's not only physically demanding, but it's mentally demanding as well, because you're having to walk up to someone and immediately try to connect with them, try to, in that moment, understand what it is you can offer them, what kind of connection you guys can have together. And it's this instant, like, very intimate setting that you're in. And so I think it can be quite draining mentally. And then physically as well, you're on your feet all day, dancing in these really tall stilettos. And so I think it's just understanding the stamina that comes with that kind of profession. Being able to get to know the sex work community has been one of the most impactful things that's ever happened to me, because these people are just incredible, and I have so much respect for what they do. And I think that the film would be completely different, and Annie would have been a completely different character if I hadn't have done any of that preparation.
Did you have a different idea of who they were before you had a chance to really get to know them as people?
I think I went into my research like very naively. I honestly knew very little about sex work and what that was like. And I had never been to a strip club before, so I knew I needed to dedicate a lot of time to that. But I was just able to get to know these women as people, like just woman to woman, and I've made a lot of incredible friends. Yeah.
Zoe, it was so fun to watch you dance in Emilia.
Yes, by the way.
Thank you.
What was it like to get back to dance, which is really how you began in this industry?
I felt like it was a true gift. I was given the opportunity to reconnect with parts of me that unconsciously I just left behind. And I was yearning. I was just yearning and missing them a lot. As a New Yorker, you know, I've been saying this a couple of times, you're born with jazz hands. And, and then you spent like your whole life unjazzing your hands, because at any moment you're like, duh. But when you grow up in New York, you know, if your grandmother saves some money, then she'll buy some raffle tickets, you know, some tickets, and then she'll take you to the theater, or you'll go to Lincoln Center. And I remember being a child and walking by Lincoln Center, and she would go, look, 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 while she was like smoking her cigarette, like, one day you're going to be there. And I remember thinking, like, what is she saying? And then it's very beautiful when things come full circle. But I do believe that you do have to find a way to manifest them.
Do you think you manifested this role in some way?
I did. By really wanting it. I think that after a certain while, at least for myself, I fell into this pattern of being an autopilot constantly. And I was a part of really successful films that became franchises, and I have no regrets. They gave me so much. I worked with amazing people, but they're very time consuming. And this is all happening whilst I'm starting a family. So that desire to grow, to sort of shatter whatever glass ceiling I felt like I was falling under, was growing more and more, you know, as the years went by. And I wrote a list. A couple of years before booking Emilia Pérez, I wrote a list with my team. And I said, well, these are the top 5 directors that I would love to work with. And like, I think that Jack was in the top 3. He was always somebody that I loved. And I love the fact that Jack challenges me to question whether or not, you know, I have enough humanity when I look at people. You know, who do we consider redeemable? And Emilia Pérez was this story with 4 women that are not perfect, They are damaged. They're products and they're victims of their environment, but they're making their own decisions and they're on a quest for their most authentic freedom. I loved the fact that in the end, it's a very simple story and it's just peppered with all this complexity of their environment and their choices. And you start out in the movie and you look at Rita, and you're like, well, if you're a lawyer, you damn well what's the difference between right and wrong. Why are you defending this criminal? And why are you going with manitas? And why are you doing all these things? But you can't really look at a woman or a person this way. It's what does she want? She deserves to want something. She wants power, she wants success, she wants beauty, she wants money. And that's great. So once I inhabited sort of that body of hers, nothing was going to stand in my way. It was quite exciting to be in Rita's world, knowing that the unthinkable was about to happen. She was going to get this opportunity to break free from these chains, and she was never going to look back.
And dance and sing.
And dance and sing. That was like the icing on the cake. Yes. It was amazing, and the rehearsals were grueling, and I welcomed it every single day. I wasn't dancing. Rita wasn't dancing. Rita was exploring, and Rita was thinking and feeling. So those breaths of song and dance were just her thoughts and her emotions. So once I think about it from that sort of perspective, I just needed to know that all those moves were going to be in my body so that I would not be limited by them, because they were not dance moves. They were just expressions, exactly. And be able to blend so many parts of me. Spanish is my first language, and it's the language that I was sung to for the first time, all the lullabies. That's how my mother healed me. She cooked for me, loves me like in my language. And as I grew older, I felt like an imposter, living like a double agent, where, behind closed doors, this is who I am, and outside, this is this other person, because I am American. But I felt like my craft was really not getting the best of me, because I don't know, there's something really beautiful about being able to incorporate so many parts of you in what you do, that makes it a much more thrilling experience, to go through, and a much more passionate process for me. So it was a great gift.
Had you made other films in Spanish before?
I mean, I've said a couple of lines here and there, but never a Latina, Yeah.
Must have been
How was it
extraordinary.
also them working with a director who essentially speaks French?
It was amazing. There's something really beautiful about Jack. This is not the first film that he does in a different language of his own. He's not limited by language. And it wasn't, the set wasn't only a Spanish and a French set. There was a lot of English, there was a lot of Italian, there was a lot of any language that we needed to be able to communicate. But, when you're synced with people, a language is just, one more tool. So that, it was a beautiful process.
Angelina, when we talk about singing as a tool, you spent 6 months learning to sing like Maria Callas. What did you learn about yourself in that process?
Oh, so much. I'm so happy to be here at this table to talk to all of you. It's so nice. She's an artist, so it was the first time I'd played an artist. And so to have this discussion has been interesting, because so much in your connection to your body, to your music, is so exciting to see you do so many things that, hadn't yet seen you do on screen, and very exciting as a fan to see that. I was really frightened because it's something I'd never done. And I had someone in my life say that I couldn't sing. When you have someone, it could be anybody, but just someone, and it could be a passing, and somehow it had this effect. I didn't realize how much that had blocked me, and also I didn't realize how much, and I think singing or not, just as women and performers, I'd lost my voice. I didn't know my voice. I think I didn't understand how much life changes your voice, whether it be childbirth or death or someone you love or sickness or whatever it may be, but we hold things in our body, we change the way we are, and somewhere along the way, I'm 49 years old, somewhere along the way, I lost my voice. So it was such a gift to have these 7 months, to have someone hold my hand and help me take a deep breath and try to make sound again. And I didn't realize I could sing, and I didn't know I was a soprano, which made no sense to me because I don't think I have that voice. And to discover opera, which is such a beautiful art form and one that I felt somehow wasn't for me. I don't know why. I think there's certain things that maybe we think, I didn't, whether it's a language, right? That this is a language that isn't for me. It's people who are raised here or more familiar with this, or it's very sophisticated or very, and so I felt like I was able to learn about this world and make sounds in a different way and use my body and my voice in a different way. And if you haven't tried to sing opera, I recommend it to everyone because it's the only thing I've ever done where you have your full physical body, your full vocal, and your full emotion. And we, especially as women, are very rarely allowed, asked, encouraged to give that.
To use our own voice.
With everything. Our
All
full
of it.
power.
Yes,
all of it.
all of it.
All of it, with everything we've got, and not feel we are adjusting to the room, to our children, to a man, to society, to right? Something along the way forms us, and we don't bust out with everything that we are, especially. So I felt like it was a gift, as you said, and Maria Callas is one of us. She was a woman and spent a lot of time in her process alone, which is why this is so lovely sitting here. I'm realizing, thinking of her and she didn't have this table.
Yeah. Right.
A lot of women in the past didn't have this table, right? There weren't as many women doing certain things, and they didn't have a community in this way. And so important that, I was also surprised I got here today. So many of us have been aware of each other we've never met. It's quite strange, really.
We don't have many opportunities to just actually connect in the form of community and really, just even reflect as artist or experience or process. It is a bit of it can be, let's say, a bit of an isolating experience.
It can.
Yeah.
You are encouraged to be isolated, right?
Yeah.
I feel like it used to be that notion that you needed to always stay super hyper focused on your journey and not seek support, right? Or not lend support. And I feel like it's the most important thing.
But it's such a mirage because
Exactly.
Yes,
it's
it
not
is.
real. I mean, we all know how important our women friends are to us.
It's everything.
It's everything. And there's a sort of strange trapdoor in society that people kind of slip through, and they're not aware of it. I mean, men
So true.
give the impression that they're not aware of it. They also give the impression that they don't have the same kind of, collective feel together. That's their affair, and they have to figure it out if it's true. It's probably not true, but
It's
at least
probably
there is
not.
a strange kind of myth around it. But this is a beautiful table. This is a beautiful moment. I mean, the glamour at this table, except for me, is beyond.
You are incredibly glamorous.
But let's imagine that, seriously, that this is, this must be encouraged. To just see it and shoot the breeze as women, and acknowledge, and also this whole idea that women don't make movies. I mean, as we all know, women have been making films as directors, and I don't just mean as performers, since the very beginning of cinema.
Editors.
Lois Weber was the very first director in 1904 or something. And that's the reality. But there's a strange sort of mesmerism around it. We're all supposed to forget it. And also, we're all supposed to be pitched against each other.
That's the thing, is that it isn't a competition, and that's been the illusion that somehow that's been bought into versus this idea that when one rises, we all rise.
Yes.
And that when we walk the path not alone, we also expand exponentially.
Yeah.
It's so important.
But I think it's something, my sense is, to generalize, that it's the collective kind of view is something that comes so naturally to women. more naturally. The whole idea that there's only room for one may suit men better, or the society of men better, but I don't think it suits women. I think we know how to do this. This is what we do.
Yes.
You know, we sit around tables and we chat, and we support each other, and we witness each other.
Absolutely.
To me, the substance is so much about the way women's bodies are criticized, the way we criticize our own bodies. What was it that drew you to that theme?
I mean, first of all, the script was such an interesting out-of-the-box read, like something I'd never read before. And the way in which it was exploring the issue of aging. And while the circumstances were set in Hollywood, it was an actress, which I think just heightened and kind of grounded it in something that everyone could identify with. The thing that really grabbed me was the exploration of the violence we can have against ourselves. It's that way in which we can dissect and criticize, and that I have found, at least in my own experience in life, that it's really not what anyone else has ever done to me. The impact has always been on what I do to myself.
Yes.
Internalized.
There was that powerful scene.
The going out scene?
Yes.
Oh my Lord, Demi.
It spoke, it was such an intimate and just raw, transparent, portrayal of what we can do to ourselves.
Yes.
How we commit self-harm on a daily basis sometimes without even touching our bodies. We can just be so like, you're not worthy of going out, and the removal of the makeup and even in the way that you were looking at yourself with so much. You were so self-critical, and I felt it, and it was so powerful.
Thank you.
I'm so grateful she came to you. I'm so grateful. That was a good idea.
I mean,
Amazing.
I mean, it was really definitely, I think the other thing as an actor that I've never explored is I didn't really have other people, that all of my scenes were almost all alone.
Yeah.
And I had no dialogue. So everything was
Amazing.
in that kind of odd, intimate moments we have with ourselves, where we are often naked, looking, dissecting, thinking. And it was a really interesting challenge to step in and really create a full life for her at all times, so that it was alive always, because I didn't have someone else to kind of feed off of. So it was, and it was also very technical. So there, a lot of times the technical aspects, which you've done a lot, where there's the technical sometimes takes priority over the sensitivity of an actor's process. Or that she sometimes liked to start this close instead of a little wider to find it. But it was, but that was really it. I think that it was so relatable in a way that it felt like it was an important message that needed to come across for us to all start to reevaluate how we're holding ourselves, that need of greater gentility. It's, I've had obviously a lot of conversations having 3 daughters, and one of the things that my middle daughter said at one point is, she says, I want to quit wasting time focusing on all that I'm not when I could be celebrating all that I am.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
And that, first of all, I said, well, maybe I've done a good job. But also that is it. That is it.
That makes me want to know, so if we do this to ourselves, how do we break out of it?
Because
How
it's
do you change
ultimately
it?
about self-acceptance. It's about really looking and appreciating who we are as we are right now, and that involves changing. Like we change, we evolve, and it isn't the same reflection in the mirror. And I think it's that idea is, would I trade having, as one woman said, she's just more loosely wrapped. Would I trade being more tightly wrapped for the wisdom that I've gained and who I've become as a woman today?
Right.
I don't think I would. And at the same time, appreciating all of the different parts of me that have brought me to where I am today. It's like embracing the shadow sides, the sides that, when we can look at our triumphs that have come through our obstacles, our challenges, our failures. We can see them not as a failure, but as an opportunity for growth and a win.
Zendaya, we have become, as an audience, used to seeing you play a kid, used to seeing you play a teenager. In Challengers, for a good portion of the movie, you're a grown woman.
Yeah.
What was that like?
It's it's kind of like the scary step in a person's career where you go from like, for so long, I feel like I was playing a teenager pretty much way past when I was one. And I appreciated that so much. I mean, being able to play Rue has been one of the greatest gifts of my life. But there comes a time where you gotta start playing your own age and beyond. And, and it was a scary thing. And also, Challengers too, it was kind of like my first time in like a leading lady role and kind of taking that responsibility as well. And being a part of the producing, aspect as well. It was all very exciting and also very like daunting, but I think for me, I think when you read certain characters, you're like, I just can't pass the opportunity to play this woman. Like, she just was refreshing to me in her unapologetic nature. She doesn't apologize for, her behavior, which I appreciated in this way, and her sense of control, or her need for control as her life is kind of falling apart, and her vicariously having to live through other people. And I think it spoke to me because I love my job so much. I'm so grateful that I get to do this for a living. And I think, like, what if it was all taken away? And for her true love was tennis. That was like, that's all she ever wanted. And there, thankfully I get to do this for as long as I really want to. But an athlete, you only have a limited amount of time until your body doesn't do what it used to do. And I think an injury is like when it gets snatched, you can't reverse that, and it gets snatched from her so quickly. And she, in her own way, loses her voice. It's like she doesn't know who she is anymore without this thing. And I think that's something that in my own life I was understanding as a young woman coming into this thing. Like, I've been working since I was a kid, and I was like, wait, who am I when I'm not working? Like, do I have a life? What do I even like to do? Like, what are my hobbies? What are my interests? Like, who is Zendaya outside of this? And so I just deeply related to that idea of like desperately wanting to hold on to this love and this thing. And in her, it manifested in maybe some more toxic actions, I'll say, but not to judge her because I know where it's coming from. It's coming from a place of truly vulnerability. Like, I remember one of our first conversations was like, what kind of like cream does she use before bed? You know what I mean? Like, what is her like? What is like being this woman, or this presentation is so important to her? How people see her, how people view her, how she comes off to other people, and so she's got to have the best stuff, and it's it's silk to bed, and it's all these things, and then you see it kind of unraveling and falling apart, and she's just trying to hold everything together, like hold this ideal. So yeah, I just it was nice to explore a character who, like I said, is unapologetic, and while she makes very different decisions than I would personally, there was a freedom there, and being guided by Luca in that way as well. And again, back to the amalgamation of everybody, Sayambu, who's incredible and made it look gorgeous, and our costume, Jonathan Anderson did the costumes, which was amazing to kind of see his artistry come out through that, and felt very like supported in this kind of becoming a woman on camera,
Yes.
And also,
one thing that was really powerful in your character that resonated with me, and it's emotions that we suppress, that we never like to admit that we feel. Your character felt so much jealousy that these men that in her mind were so undeserving of this gift, of this talent. And it was just amazing to see that, to see a woman be equal to a man when it comes to aptitude, when it comes to talent, when it comes to wit and all of these things. And her competition weren't other women, it was the partners in her life. It was quite interesting.
Her boys. Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And again, it was exploring parts of a life that I haven't lived yet, having kids or getting married, and these kinds of things. She's already had this part of her life, so I was strange to kind of embody that part of myself that hasn't quite existed yet, But I guess that is my job. but it was, it's a different touch point, it's a different part of yourself that hasn't quite been explored yet. But yeah, I don't know, I appreciated that she just said whatever the hell she wanted to say. And I was like, girl, maybe we should stop slapping people, you know what I mean? And then getting a little crazy. But she's entirely herself. And I appreciated that both Justin, who wrote the screenplay, and Luca allowed her to be exactly who she was. It was never trying to explain why she was like this. She just liked this. She was like this when she was younger. It's like it wasn't necessarily the injury that made her this way. She just is this way. And I appreciated being able to explore that.
It was unapologetic also in her ambition and her drive, which is what I loved.
Me too.
And that when there was that, because what was so beautiful was the subtlety of the grief that I felt you held underneath, and then just activating it into, you channeled it over into their success, which was beautiful.
You said it beautifully.
But also, I think, back to a bigger conversation of this idea of not ever being able or allowing women the space to grieve or to have a moment to yourself. I think she's so conditioned to be next. There's no time to feel sorry for yourself. There's no time to grieve, and she just immediately pivots and she's like, okay, new plan. And I think that is that thing of allowing ourselves moments be a person, and we don't have to hold it all together. We don't have to
our humanness.
Yeah, be responsible.
Just our humanness.
It's about a relationship with success. The whole idea of success being the holy grail that you're going for, whatever that means. I mean, for a sports person, it means something very, very clear.
Yeah.
And that everything else takes second or third or fourth place. And where does the living happen?
Yeah.
Well, it's also that question of identity. Who am I without?
Yeah.
Because what we do isn't actually who we are.
Yeah.
It's just what we do. But I think that takes time to kind of find within yourself. It's early part of life, you're just striving to see what you can do. And then if you find enough of it, it's then having to separate and live and have more of a balance in your existence.
Zendaya, did you feel like you figured out what your hobbies are and who you are when you aren't working? Are you still working on
Next question. Okay. Next question. I think it's a thing that I'm figuring out and I'm learning as I go along. I think having time off accidentally really was time for me to go, okay, we have to have a person outside of your job. It's really all I know. And I also think because I'm so passionate, I'm lucky that my hobby is the thing that I do for a living. It is my thing that I would want to do if I wasn't going to work every day. It is everything to me. But what other than that, is brings me joy. And I think that for me, it's been about just trying new things. As stupid as it sounds, pottery or anything with your hands, just something, learning new skills or crafts. And even if it's okay, well, I tried that for a week. But I tried it. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Try making sourdough bread.
I got into baking.
What a humbling experience.
I got into baking. I can make a good scone now, But
wow, that's impressive. Scone?
Yeah, a good scone. I got you.
That's
anytime
amazing.
you need it. But it's just trying to find other things that can bring you joy and make you happy and try to discover who my life is outside of the presentation of who I am, and not being so tough on yourself all the time,
Well, when you've worked from when you were a child, which most of us have not had that experience, when did you start working, Mikey?
I was about 16, almost 16.
That's pretty young still, isn't it? I take my hat off to both of you. It's quite an achievement to work as young people. It's hard enough when you're older, but to work as young people, but for you to have worked since you were so young, for that to have been part, because the rest of us, we were, climbing trees and not making any money.
It's odd. It's odd, and I have a complicated relationship with the idea of child actors or child acting in general. because I've seen it be detrimental to people, and I don't know, I am grateful. I'm so grateful that this is how it turned out. I wouldn't change it, but there are things that I'm like, dang, there are things I wish I kind of lived privately, you know, and tried to because you're figuring out who you are in front of the world, and you're like, I'm trying to do this right, and I want to make everyone happy, but like, I don't really know who I am yet. You know what I mean? I'm still figuring it out. I have no idea what I'm doing, you know, which I guess that is true for all of us at any point in your life, you know. I say my mom had like her butterfly moment at 50 when she got her first tattoo, or I pushed her to get her first tattoo, and now she's covered. She's got like sleeves basically. So I think, you know, you can reinvent yourself and butterfly at any point in your life, which I think is beautiful. But yeah, it is odd to do it so young. And
I'm excited for you finding all your fabulous life ahead.
Yeah, well, thanks.
Lots
I
of
appreciate
living.
and I
And pottery.
appreciate being right, and pottery and scones. But I appreciate being able to have moments like this, because I feel like at least now the connections are made. Like there are people I can reach out to and ask questions, because all of you have such experience, and that's so valuable, you know. And often I feel like I get too nervous to reach out and be like, hey, like, can I get some advice, you know? Because this kind of community is so important, you know, and like. It's
And in
special.
truth, it's a real gift to feel like if there's any kind of experience, strength, and hope that you have, that you could actually impart to someone, like that actually is enriching to the other person.
Absolutely.
Like to be able, like, and I certainly forget because I want to not be vulnerable. I want to not think that I don't have it figured out, you know?
Yeah.
So reach out always.
I
Like,
will.
I
I'm
feel
like,
like I think it's like
I'm texting, you know, like getting everybody's contact information after this.
And we'll help you set up the bakery.
Yes. Yes. And it's like you do baking, and then you do pottery, and then you act as well.
You would think I could help you with the pottery, but unfortunately, I cannot.
Okay. I just got that. Yeah, that's so funny. We actually did that in Euphoria. We did.
Oh, you did? Oh my God,
We
that's
did
so
a
funny.
reenactment of that in Euphoria. I just realized.
I was a disaster with the pottery.
You were?
Oh my gosh. I mean, mine literally looked like, the pots I made looked like kindergartner pots.
I feel like they're probably collector's items.
Yeah, that's what I was joking about. That's what I was joking about.
Oh my God!
I was like, I just got it too.
Yeah, it took me a second. I was like,
Why can I imagine Demi sitting there like that, and it all came flooding back?
Tilda, Pedro Almodovar works fast, I hear. Like, he's a one take, two take kind of guy.
Yeah.
And in this film, you have some long monologues. Were you doing this one takes, two takes, move on, or did you ask him for more?
Both. There was begging, but nope. He seems to know what he wants. And I was nervous about that. I was nervous that he was going too fast for us to have an opportunity to squeeze the orange, you know, every which way, which I love to do. I've worked with David Fincher, who everybody's, you know, the legend is that he'll go 100 takes, and I happen to love that too. Right?
Really?
Because then you know you've done it. You know
It's all there,
It's
yeah.
all there, and you know you figure it out. It's very challenging, I find, the two take thing, or even the one take sometimes, especially with a lot of dialogue.
Do you ever ask for another? Do you often ask for another?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah?
There have definitely, I mean, on Sean's films, there'd be times where we'd be stealing shots. We'd bring this film camera into restaurants, clubs, and to a pool hall once, just filming on the street and like trying to steal things. And sometimes you don't feel like you got it. And so it's like, well, let's just go in one more time, but you kind of can't. And then obviously our film being such a small budget, there were some days where we're just like jam-packing scenes in, trying to get things done. And I'm like, wait, like I just need something more. But I think actually watching it back, the things that we did end up getting was just right in the moment.
Yeah.
Because the film is it's so hectic and frenetic, and you're feeling that as an actress, trying to make sure that you got it, and it's not possible.
It's not
really.
possible.
There's no such thing.
It's not possible, and I actually believe that this is, for me anyway, this is possibly the most difficult part of the work, is letting things go.
Yes.
Moving on. And having the discipline to just go, do you know what? I didn't think I got it, but you know what? Getting it is impossible. And what do I know anyway?
Yes.
Because very often we think we got it, and you can speak to this, Angelina, as a director, that the performance thinks it's been nailed, but actually that's the overshot one. That's the one where it's burst. And the one that felt a little rickety and there was some kind of weird energy around it, that's the golden thing. But you can't necessarily feel that inside. That's why a director can say, trust me, we got it, we're moving on. And you have to go, okay.
I trust you.
I trust you.
Sometimes
You're Pedro Almodovar.
Sometimes easier than other times.
Other times. Yeah. It's a feat of faith.
Yeah. Angelina, do you feel that way coming into Maria having directed? Does that change the way you work as an actress?
I have more of an understanding. I was always an actress that loved the crew, and I was always an actress that understood I was a piece of a whole and loved that. But after being a director, you are much more aware of all the pieces and all the needs, and you are very conscious that an actor is important, but a piece. And I loved casting. I found casting very interesting as an actor, and I think if you directed or will direct, that's as an actor you maybe are looking for something else, because you know when you're in the pocket, you know your authentic self, and you know it's not some perfect presentation or some idea of this or some perfect reading. You know it's this like someone that has something behind those eyes, someone who's a little messy, someone who's a little brave. There's all these other things you look for. A person. I think a lot of what makes an interesting actor is an interesting person. And then if you build a family, which is very much the set, and so it's and you kind of encourage everybody to bring their best, then you have this space where everybody shows up in different ways and collaborates. And I tend to find that the actors know I push them and I root for them, but you communicate. And every actor's different. It's very interesting. I have my process in learning about the other needs of other actors that are so different from me to make sure I'm there for what they need in their process.
Demi, in the third act of The Substance, you're wearing tons of prosthetics. You become this creature. And I just wonder, what was the process like of putting all that on and figuring out how to act through it?
It's interesting. It's so delicate and fragile. It's not like you have practice time with everything on. It's kind of, you're finding it in some respects on the day. I mean, there was some preparation. I mean, the time for me in the chair was anywhere from 6 to 9.5 hours.
Wow.
And which is a lot. It's a lot. And also because there's a surreal element to this. Trying to also figure out what's the logic. Like what's, I'm degraded and kind but I can also run like a bat out of hell. I was a little bit like, and so there's like kind of that kind of practical, logical part of my brain that was really wrestling with what it was. And I will also say, and you also must know this too, Zoe, it's a much easier read on paper than the physical of like being in there. And at the same time, I also think the time in the chair, which it's helpful if you can get very still and zen, also allows you to actually move into embodying and shifting. Like for me, it was like a slow progression over that time and allowing it to kind of become part of me.
It is a grueling process.
Yeah, I was going to say
6 to 9 hours.
6 to 9.5 hours.
No.
When we had to do the whole body.
Yes, okay, it makes sense. The legs, everything, right?
And it's very delicate. You can't really eat or drink because it's so delicate. Things will fall apart. And I think probably the most challenging is having somebody touch you constantly.
All the time. Yeah.
That was that
And the
was what
taking it
required
off.
patience.
The taking it off is the really long bit, isn't it?
No, it's actually much quicker. You open
like
up
an
that bottle of
hour.
wine, you put your music on, little Sam Cooke, and you're like, I'm done. You're digging all that green off.
It's always a funny word. I'm the left and the left. Isopropyl state, is that it? The stuff that you take it off.
Isopropylon or something.
Yeah, where you're scraping away. Oh my God. I mean, I will say, Coralie was one of those who loved to do many takes. Many takes. Like wiping the makeup off my face with each section was 15 takes at least.
Wow.
And that, I could have used a few less, perhaps, on that one. But I never like to give up. If they feel like, if they're saying, the director says they need it, like, I want to keep going.
Yeah. I think it's important to have that communication. It's when they really tell you what's going on. It's when you have no communication from Video Village and you just keep going over and over again because you just don't, it feels like you're just throwing spaghetti on the wall. Like, give me something, an adjective, give me any kind of direction, one sentence, 5 words.
And then they'll explain
And then I
to
can
you
give you 5 more takes.
that it's actually not about you, it's because the wind is not hitting the trees right.
I know, and then you feel
And then
like,
you go,
why am I
Well,
here?
you're perfect. It's just... The
Yeah, so
light's
then you're not sitting there going, what am I not doing right?
And
And
you're
what
like,
am I
let's
like,
go
what's
again.
wrong with this?
Again, let's give that wind a chance.
Zendaya, in Dune 2, you're in the middle of the desert, and it's this big epic sci-fi movie, but it's sort of built upon this romance. And I'm kind of curious how you figured out how you were going to flirt in space.
In space.
What was the trick?
I think it's really leading, it's Denny. He's such a special filmmaker, obviously, but like just very easy to work with in the sense that he always knows what he wants and is very clear, but also gives you room to play as well, where you feel kind of supported. And I think for that, it was like, it's not like, a normal scene like, what's up? Like, you're cute. Like you've been here before. This is.
Like that would have worked too.
There's a version of that.
That's more you in space.
So we're like, how does this fit into the Dune universe? How do we, get these two people that are technically young people falling in love? This whirlwind romance. Also stealing shots in between, because there is so much. It's such a massive piece of work, and we really are just like a little part of it. Also like being in the desert, and you have limited time to shoot every day because the sun is right in this perfect place, and so I think my thing was just like being as prepared as I could, and then trying my best. Like there was like one scene that we could only really shoot for like an hour a day. So we kind of like over the course of a few days shot like a scene.
Because of the light?
Because of the sun, yeah. Wow. And so you're trying to like, okay, we were here yesterday, but how do we get back into the tenderness and finding these moments? And Denny in the beginning, he would say, I'm gonna do like a glances pass. I'll ask you guys to like just look at each other from across the room. And I find that there's like so much you can do without words and without scenes. Just like a glance between the two of them really built this love story, and made you believe it, because again, there's so much going on. So it's like, how are we going to tell this story when there's like all this action, like so many storylines to fill and build and make it make sense. So it was glances pass, just these little moments of like, oh, I see you across the room, and it says so much for the characters. So I just felt very lucky to be a part of it, like from the beginning. I was just like, I'll play like a tree, the sandworm, like what do you need, like this is just so cool, like I just want to be there.
How much does what's going on in the outside world, politically, geopolitically, affect your choice of projects and your choice of how you spend your time in your work? Is that something that figures in at all?
I remember very early on in my career, I felt a couple of times at my, these self-made crossroads where being a daughter of immigrants and being Latina in America, as you start to grow in your career, you carry on this responsibility to represent your community, and I stopped that. I made that choice. It felt risky, but I made it with all my heart in hopes that it was the right decision that would help my community by following my heart. But that's not to say that I may one day feel compelled to make a decision on a material that has a very important conversation around a cause or an event that should be present in people's minds and in people's tables, when they're having dinner. That's not to say that I'll never ever, consider that.
It's interesting to hear Zoe say that felt like a risk, and I wonder, when you reflect on your own careers, what's a moment that felt like a risk?
I think when you look at something where you're being pushed out of your comfort zone that scares you, are those moments that you are taking a risk. In a certain way, we take a risk every time. We don't know. There's no guarantees. There's no formula. I think, at least, and I think it's the risk that makes it exciting. It's the risk that, because if you step into something, that that you're going to be better on the other side. As you were talking, Zoe, I was just thinking about, do you guys, any of you, feel like that in a way that roles find you as much as you find them?
Absolutely.
Right? And that there are things that you gain from it, not that you always know, but that you get from the other side, that there are parallels, for sure.
Well, everybody has their own comfort zone, and so, as you say, to go out of that comfort zone is always going to feel like a growing possibility. My comfort zone is to work in very close collective communication with people. I've always done that from the very beginning. And for me, a massive risk would be to go and work with people that I didn't know. That would be the biggest risk. But I know, and this is one of the reasons I've always found it very difficult to name myself an actor, because I know that in general, actors don't work this way. Actors generally work alone and encounter a loneliness a lot of the time, and are going, with my admiration, into these foreign territories with all their talent and all their inspiration kind of within their own arms, and they'll go into these foreign lands and bring it to bear. I'm incredibly impressed by that, but I can't work that way. And I don't know that I ever have really gone into a foreign territory. I'm a coward in that way.
I think a lot of people would disagree, but
Yes.
it's your right. We are coming toward the end, and I wanted to wind down. Actually, Tilda, I wanted to share something you had said in an interview, which was interesting.
Oh, Lord.
It's good. It's good. You were talking about your friendship with Pedro and how you had met. You said you met at a Hollywood party where you bonded over feeling like outsiders. And you said you were, quote, both shy and tickled pink and pinching ourselves, but not confident enough to step in and talk to, say, Angelina Jolie.
She was there. She was one. It was a South Park moment, and we had Liza Minnelli over here, and we had, Sacha Baron Cohen over there, and Angie was there, and both Pedro and I were like scorched with the glamour of it. We just couldn't believe that we were present.
And I was probably, because I never go out, really alone and not sure anybody wanted to talk to me, and probably I would have been so happy had they said hello.
This is the truth of human animals.
Yes.
We're all shy, right?
Yes. And I guess this is why we're here. I mean, how lovely to see you all connect like this.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.